And at the end of the day, if you're there's giving advice and then there's getting people to take advice, and those are two very different things. They're very, very different. And
it sounds like you do that really well, by the way, like getting people to take your advice. I've been to more business conferences and conversations with people where they said, I was working and then I quit my job and I started my own thing. I found a muse and I started my own gig because they read your book. So I actually really want to hear this.
Right.
Everything's happening.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, standing here with Doug Larson and Chris Moore, CTP behind the camera. We have traveled up to Malibu to hang out with Mr. Tim Ferriss.
Tim, welcome, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming up.
If you don't know who he is, go pick up his books. 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Chef. 4-hour, what's next?
4-hour nap.
4-hour nap. Once you split your day up in these 4-hour segments.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Tim is one of the things that fascinated about me about you is that you serve, you're always doing self-experiments and tweaking from there. And I don't think that's much different than what we've all done, but you've documented it, put it in books, and kind of shared with the world like what works for you.
Right, and it's always been a compulsion of mine. I think that it started with wrestling in high school, and I was born premature, so my thermoregulation has always been off. And what that meant was I would overheat, and I could only really give it my all for the first period or so, maybe the second period. So I got very good at cutting weight, and towards the end of my sort of high school career, got to the point where I was cutting 20 to 30 pounds twice a week to compete.
Wow.
Which is obscene and not very safe, particularly if you don't monitor certain things. So I became very familiar with sodium, potassium sparing, diuretics, and things of this type, so that I could do it the more intelligent way, and also rehydration, right? Because dehydration is just one piece of it. So then how do you rehydrate intelligently?
A hell of a lot harder in high school wrestling than MMA, where you got 24 hours. What do you have, 2 hours maybe sometimes?
Yeah, or you might have to step right on the mat, in which case, depending on the regulations, that would change your strategy for cutting weight and rehydrating.
Yeah.
So it could just be a handful of hours. And then it's like, all right, well, why is Pedialyte better than Gatorade? And what are the reasons? You have to delve into the science, and you have to log, for instance. One of the things that I did, which I think is kind of representative of my style of experimentation, it's not my style, it's just, I think, a good competitive practice, is that I would practice cutting weight for practices so that I could see the performance impact. In other words, I wouldn't do my experiment on game day, and a lot of people mess this up. I mean,
a lot
it's
of
just,
lifters do that.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lifters do it. MMA fighters do it.
I know a ton of MMA fighters that only cut weight for their fights, and they don't practice it one single time.
Yeah, or they take
disaster.
or they take Nubane, or they take some type of stimulant right before the fight. They've never used it in training. They end up overheating.
I have athletes who are like, oh, should I take this supplement today? And it's like competition day. I'm like, have you ever taken it before? They're like, well, no. I'm like, no.
I always remember the guy who
no,
took the red
you
line.
Yeah.
Never take a red line before a meet and have a heart attack on the platform.
Yeah.
We saw it happen to a dude.
Really?
Yeah, this, off-label, whatever the hell they put in there.
Yeah.
Don't shove it down and then listen to Pantera at 11. Get yourself all hot and bothered for your opener, and then go out there and just pass out or whatever on the platform.
Yeah.
Bad policy.
Exactly. So I think that experimentation, and we were chatting about this a little bit earlier, is really, it's just understanding the scientific method and controlling your variables. And an experiment isn't a success or a failure. You're either confirming or disproving a hypothesis, and that's it. And so my whole life, my whole writing career, all of my work with startups, all of it is really about testing, finding sort of absurd, outrageous hypotheses to test.
Yeah, so you're not just doing it with fitness, every aspect of your life.
Yeah, it's reflected in everything that I do. And there's a really good book, not mine, called Bad Science, written by a doctor named Ben Goldacre in the UK. And I actually excerpted one of his chapters for the 4-Hour Body and then condensed certain aspects of that book into yet another chapter, but it really goes through how media compels people to misinterpret science and how you can separate the noise and the nonsense, the fact from the fiction, and so on. Outstanding book. I really recommend it to people because you hear folks all the time say, X causes this. And when you read the articles, if you've read this book, Bad Science, you're like, there's no way they can prove that.
Right.
Absolutely no way whatsoever. And so very, very simple things like correlation versus causation. And I think what it helps you to do is learn how to not fool yourself. And one of my idols is Richard Feynman, who wrote a world-class physicist, won a Nobel Prize, also was part of the team, and he made the announcement, but who discovered the O-ring was the fatal flaw in the Challenger. That is passed below a certain temperature. And he said, the most important thing is to not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool.
Yeah.
So
everybody needs to live that code in their life.
Yeah, just getting good at testing your assumptions. It's like, okay, if you think that like A, B, and C are helping you, Pantera plus Redline plus this
keep the Pantera. Keep Pantera.
Keep Pantera.
Yeah.
I look more and more like Phil Anselmo every day.
5 minutes alone always does the trick on deadlift day.
You don't need to test it. It's just obvious.
Yeah, that's right. It's a given. It's a universal law. But getting good at just improving your thinking. And so the precision of your thinking is tied very closely to experimentation. It's like, oh, you think that works? Like, let's throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And actually measure it.
And I like that idea. Obviously, then I just latched on to like Elon Musk was in an interview talking about how do you do all these things, Elon? Shit, it's really impressive. He goes, so I always just, what would a physicist do? Go back to fundamental thinking. Like, drill down into the most fundamental thing you can't get past through, and then reintroduce complexity and variables from there, and always be going back to the foundation of source. Like, test everything, make sure this is true. It's probably not. Somebody says you can't do something, that's probably not the way it is.
Yeah, with respect to supplements, something I don't think a lot of people consider is that if you take a supplement like creatine, for example, that's widely considered to be something that works, whatever that means, and it means a lot of different things. But it might not work for you, though. If it works for most people, that still isn't a guarantee it's going to work for you. It might not work for you at all. There's a large variety of people that are non-responders to something like creatine. So you still have to test it for yourself, even if it's generally accepted to work.
Or the other way around. So you have you have high responders, right?
Yeah.
And you'll look at a study, let's just say, and I also think the degree, the magnitude of the change that you need depends a lot on your level of competition. So, for instance, you could look at beet juice, right, or beetroot juice, and its effect on endurance.
Michael asked because he threw up on beet juice one time.
Yeah, you don't want to do
overdone
like
it.
You don't want to do like a beetroot cake stand or anything.
Like a beetroot and raw egg smoothie, then you went and ran or something.
Yeah,
like 104 degree heat on 4th of July in the park doing a CrossFit WOD. I yacked up raw eggs and beet juice.
Was that punishment for something?
It was
he thought it was a good idea.
It was one of those things. I woke up in the morning. I was out of a lot of typical ingredients. I was like,
So you throw up on the hill and go, I totally tested
and
failed this
I'm
hypothesis.
throwing up all this red gooey stuff, and people around me are like, is Mike dying? It's like, nah, it's just beet juice.
That's horrible.
Well, Tim will tell you why to try it again.
Anyways, go ahead.
Well, if you look at the studies for beetroot juice, a lot of them show a non-statistically significant response. And just to give you an idea of how to think of this type of thing, it might be 10 elite athletes who are in this, it's an N of 10, and they look at the response, they're like, oh, it was only I'm making this up, it was a 5% improvement. It's not statistically significant. Well, it's like, hold on a minute. Or a 2%. Let's make it even like a 2% improvement, non-significant. And the reason that it's non-significant is you need a combination of magnitude of change, and then you need the sample size, right? And you can have a statistically significant study with very few people. That's a misinterpretation where people are like, oh, it's only 20 people, that study's bullshit. It's like, no, it depends.
If it's a super
if they double their
effect,
strength, that's significant.
Right,
but
right.
the study was underpowered. So you start to look at it and you're like, well, wait a second. Okay. Didn't have enough subjects, so it was underpowered. They would have needed like a 30% improvement to be statistically significant in the conventional sense. Plus, you're looking at elite athletes.
Yeah.
5% is meaningful, but what would the effect be on an untrained athlete, right? You look at creatine, for instance, great example. It's like you could load someone, take them through a phase of creatine, they could put on for the first time 10, 15 pounds of lean tissue, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it will be retention, water retention, but
Sure.
they'll get stronger. And that's another thing we could talk about, but like sort of intermuscular physics get really interesting when you start blasting out the sarcoplasm, like adding fluid to the cell.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point being, beetroot juice can work, and it can work really well. And you only realize you can throw the baby out with the bathwater if you look at a lot of the reports of these studies, even from people who should know better. But to trade you a story for your vomiting up beet blood in front of people, I remember I was doing an experiment with trans resveratrol. So people who drink red wine because they think it's good for them, it might be probably for the social relaxation benefit and not the life extension benefit.
Sure.
But people talk about resveratrol, and
It's an antioxidant for the audience.
Resveratrol is a component found in red wine that helps to turn on, as I understand it, a set of genes called the sirtuin genes, SIRTUIN, and those have been implicated for life extension. And
Okay.
there are different ways to turn those on and off. And but you'd have to drink like 48 cases of wine or something to really get like a clinically
Right.
This is gonna be hard to
noticeable
do.
effect.
Yeah.
Test experiment fired up.
Dose always matters.
Yeah, but what's really interesting about resveratrol is that it can be there. I found this video of this rat called Super Rat, and it was nicknamed Super Rat because they fed it massive quantities of resveratrol, and it doubled its endurance. And so they had a control rat and Super Rat. It might have been a mouse. And these scientists put up split screen video of this mouse getting exhausted and this one just going and going and going and going, and set it to the Superman music. And I thought to myself, well, the life extension is really hard to test because you don't know until you die. It's very hard as an N of 1 to test that. But I was like, I could test the endurance. So I consumed what would be considered 60 days worth of trans resveratrol, so 2 huge bottles. Because I looked at sort of the milligrams per milligram of body weight that they use with the rats, and I just replicated it.
Yeah.
And so I downed 60 days worth of these pills.
This is a bold move, Tim.
Before one workout. So I just sat there and housed all these pills before one workout.
Oh my God.
And what I didn't realize, and then I got to the training facility. This was in South Africa, like a very sophisticated sports training center.
Yeah, they got huge sports science programs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize, and I found this out afterwards, is that one of the sort of inactive ingredients was left off of the label. This happens a lot with supplements. The inactive ingredient, and I still am not 100% clear on why they do this, but they cut it into a lot of products. I think it was Amodin, and that's a laxative.
Oh boy.
So I was sitting down, getting the ground rules for this running test that I was going to be doing, and I just started sweating profusely,
Like the sweats.
the fear sweats, where you're just like, God, this rancid just sheen of sweat coming out of me. And this sports doctor's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm great."
Did you tell him what you had done, or is this like
No. I didn't tell him. I didn't want there to be any observer bias or anything like that.
I think there's a terrible evil within me.
And so I was like, "Do you have a bathroom?" I cut him off mid-sentence, and just I did one of these butt pinching waddles as waddle sprint down the hallway, and did a sort of a reverse broad jump through the stall, and I was just
Oh, no.
I was total. I did the running test. Needless to say, I wasn't impressing anyone.
Sounds like those little baking soda studies,
Yeah.
man.
Ugh.
Oh God,
Those-
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But experimentation, I think that this applies to people who are considering starting a business, people who are considering quitting a job. There are ways that you can experiment that are not necessarily binary, right? So you could, if you're thinking about trying to negotiate with your boss for a remote work agreement, you can gather data over, say, a Saturday, Sunday, looking at the number of hours required to complete client projects or whatever your metrics are that you're measured on. And you can gather that, and you can make a case for it, right? It's an experiment.
Yeah.
And so I view my life oftentimes as just a series of 2-week experiments. I find 2 weeks to be a good period of time for a lot of things. And they
That
certainly
technique works, by the way. I was in the 4-hour work week. Some
Yeah.
version. I did that. I hate sitting here in this fucking cubicle. So one thing I started doing is just tracking some of those things. This reminded me, and I presented a case. So yeah, I got the right to start working home. Not every other Wednesday at first, and every week, and then slowly you kind of earn the trust, and then you show the data, and they let you do it. It's amazing how it works.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
this shit works.
It does. It does work. And you can apply it certainly to all sorts of physical performance, whether that be, fat loss, blood testing. A lot of folks get very infrequent blood tests. I go through periods where I'll get blood tests every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Or do urinalysis every day.
Yeah, I'm between 6 weeks and 4 months for blood work right now.
Yeah, and you'll hear from there's some amazing doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors, but there are also a lot of really bad doctors. And there's an expression P equals MD, which is pass equals MD, and it's like there's just like you have the top 10% in the class, you have the lower 10% who barely scrape by.
Yeah,
and you'll hear oftentimes they're like, oh well, like these following markers aren't going to change for like 90 days, 100 days, 6 months. Like come back in 6 months, and I'll be like, it's just not true. Like you can change blood markers really, really quickly.
Just some things in your blood might take longer, but there's a lot of things that will happen really quick.
And some things take a longer period of time. I mean, if you're looking at, say, I think spermatogenesis has like a 60-plus day cycle. Maybe it's a 69-day, oddly enough, or 60 to 70-day cycle. So if you're looking at changes like that, you have to take those into account. But if you're looking at LDL, HDL, the first thing to realize is that those can change very quickly. The second thing to realize is that
Gust coming in off the coast of Malibu.
Yeah, it is a very refreshing breeze. The second thing to realize is that those variables change all the time. So people who get an annual checkup and their doctor will say, "Oh my God, this is too high." Well, they shouldn't say, "Oh my God," but they'll say, "This is too high."
Jesus,
this is out of range, right? This is too low, too high. We're going to prescribe these medications. And the fact of the matter is, before you say go on statins, and I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on the internet, so work with your professionals, but you should verify that. Do it a second time. There's no harm. Pay the extra money if you have to. Verify before you go on a regimen of statins or anything else. Because I've seen people, for instance, who get testosterone replacement therapy, and their doctors have drawn blood at different times of the day.
Yeah.
That's a big problem because you could.
It's like stepping on the scale at different times of the day.
Oh yeah, it's especially when you're dealing with something that is released in the way that, say, testosterone is, or a growth hormone, for instance. I mean, which you would have to measure through a proxy, but with testosterone, you could see a difference of easily 100 points if you do it on a different day of the week and a different time of the day.
Yeah.
So let's say you do a testosterone test on a Monday after a hard weekend of drinking, and you test it at 10 o'clock when you usually wake up at 7, and then you compare that to a before test, which was a Wednesday at 7:30 in the morning or 8 in the morning. Oh my God! You're gonna think your balls have fallen off.
Yeah. We were talking with Kirk Parsley on an episode a couple weeks back, maybe a couple months back now, who I think you had connected with at some point, and he was saying if you can sleep deprive somebody, even just for one day, you might be able to drop their test by like 30%.
Oh yeah,
like it's an insane amount.
It wasn't
with just
much
one
sleep
night
deprivation
of sleep
too. It was like a couple hours off.
Yeah,
it's easy. Same with cortisol. Like you can mess with all that stuff. So if you think you have a big problem based on one of those markers, verify the test. Replicate the result. I mean, that's what engineers do in tech, right? They try to replicate the bug. It's like, okay, cool. You're reporting a bug. If we can't replicate it, it's probably user error, right? Or it's not a problem. It's some type of glitch that you misinterpreted. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I think about that kind of stuff all the time.
With all your experimentation and I mean, the way I view you after reading some of your books is like you're real big on productivity and efficiency. What are some routines you do in the morning for that productivity and efficiency, and which supplements do you find are good for that?
So let me address this. I'll address the supplements first. The supplements are supplements. They're supplemental. So I don't take any supplements all the time. I think that's asking for trouble. And if you think there's no side effect, it just means you haven't identified the side effect.
Right.
So I take no supplements all the time. I cycle on and off of everything because I think that the body's very sophisticated with negative feedback loops. I am currently taking a few things. When I wake up, I'm taking DHEA. So very, very small amounts, 10 to 30 milligrams. I'm taking...
I will probably warn people in the crowd about that one too.
Yeah, sure.
That's banned by WADA
Yeah,
and
yeah.
USADA. So if you're competing in a sport that's being tested,
Yeah, you got to be careful.
just stay away from that one.
Do your
It's
homework.
over the counter, but doesn't mean that you can use it in competition.
That's right.
right.
That's
Know your
right.
drugs, folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's not taking anything illegal.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is just, this is context, is that I'm coming out of a very difficult period of about 6 months where I had severe Lyme disease symptoms. And
Oh,
so
man.
I had deterioration of the joints. I had extreme chronic fatigue. I started having dementia-like symptoms where I was losing my
wow.
short-term memory. I had trouble recalling
Scary
names
as
of close
shit.
friends. Terrifying.
Mhm.
My knees were so swollen that I had trouble getting up and walking in the morning. So my regimen is not necessarily your regimen, all right? But DHEA, I'm taking calcium D-glucarate, or glucarate. I read these things instead of pronounce
Right.
them. So,
Yeah.
which is useful for many different things. I'll let you guys read up on it. But pre and probiotics. So probiotics get a lot of fanfare. You don't hear as much about prebiotics.
Right.
And I'll be talking a lot more about this at some point. But if you don't have, I think it's helpful to think of your gut, and there are many different microbiomes. But if we're talking about the gut biome, you can think of it as a rainforest. And if the topsoil has been depleted, it doesn't matter if you're taking these amazing plants, i.e. probiotics,
Yeah.
and throwing them down your throat because they won't take root.
No substrate
Mm.
there.
Right. It's important to create an environment in which beneficial bacteria can grow. And to accomplish that, you can consume things like resistant starches. Like baobab root is quite interesting. You can consume inulin, for instance, different types of fiber. And
Oligofructose.
Yeah, that's
oligofructose.
Oligofructosaccharides.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that is going to get a lot of fanfare and get a lot of attention in the next few years.
We start marketing our product now.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Tim's like, no, I'll have
He's
mine
like,
now.
I'm
yeah,
on
yeah.
top
It's
of
like
it.
no, I already have mine.
We're not going to catch up with him.
And part of my theory about Lyme disease and why it's so poorly understood is that there are many people who have been diagnosed or diagnosed themselves as having chronic Lyme disease.
Mhm.
If you talk to most infectious disease specialists or MDs in that area, they will dispute the existence of chronic Lyme disease. They will say, no, there's no proof that exists. And then that will be countered by thousands or tens of thousands of people who say, what about all these symptoms?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense that it
Right.
doesn't exist. And my pet theory currently is that chronic Lyme is actually chronic depletion of gut flora, among other things. So when people are diagnosed, and oftentimes months of doxycycline or other broadband antibiotics to address Lyme, they fix the Lyme, let's just assume,
Right.
for the time being, but they never fix their gut.
Right.
And so they get depressed. What happens, right? If the gut is assisting in production of neurotransmitters, among other things, a lot of people call it the second brain. You get depressed, you get fatigued, you have digestion problems, you can have joint problems,
Sleep problems, right?
Sleep problems. The symptoms overlap with Lyme disease, which makes it a fucking disaster from the standpoint of fixing. So,
Yeah.
in any case, my morning routine, just to talk about, I focus on effectiveness more than efficiency. And I think it's important. I think that our thinking is only as clear as the labels we use and the words we use. For me, I think about it a lot. Also, writing helps. But effectiveness is doing the right things. Efficiency is doing things well. So it's possible to be very efficient, but be efficient at doing the wrong things. So I try to, in the mornings, my routines are usually focused on a number of things, including clarifying and confirming what those few things are that matter. So I will wake up. I have tea every morning, but I'll usually wake up and I'll do 15 to 20 minutes of transcendental meditation. Then I will start my tea. I'll boil the water, or actually it's 185 degrees, so I get very specific.
You have to be specific,
Yeah,
folks.
I get it to 185
Don't boil
degrees.
the water and toss on your tea and coffee, you animals.
Savages.
Savages, what are you doing to that coffee?
So I have a Cuisinart kettle that allows you to pick the temperature.
Oh, nice.
And to 185 degrees, I usually have a combination that just like you guys saw earlier, I have this stuff. So it's Pu-Erh tea, which is an aged black tea, typically from China, combined with turmeric and ginger, and then I like to add in some type of green tea, oftentimes essentia. And if I'm feeling sick, or if I feel like I'm coming down with something, I'll add garlic to that, so minced garlic usually. But otherwise, that is sort of my morning tea. And then once I have my tea, I will sit down and I will do one of two things. I'll either use something called the 5-minute journal, which was actually created by some readers who made it their muse, their business after reading the 4-Hour Workweek. But it's 5 minutes first thing in the morning, 5 minutes right before you go to bed.
Right.
And it's really, really helpful for, I think, priming your mind for the day, and does that through 3 things you're grateful for, forcing you to re-identify your priorities, and then having basically a performance review before you go to bed. And either that or morning pages. So I will freehand journal, and the intention of that is not to be a good writer. And I think it's particularly valuable for people who never write or don't write, actually, because it allows you to take the self-defeating talk or anxieties or worries that you have, your preoccupations, and trap them in the form of words on a page so that you can get on with your fucking day.
Yeah.
And not have them ricocheting around in your head like a stray bullet. So usually one of those two things. I like to, so let's just say hypothetically, been trying to wake up earlier. I've always been a night owl, but let's just say I'm waking up earlier.
Struggle with the same
So that
thing.
gets us to let's just say 8:30, 9 o'clock. At that point, I like to do some basic mobility work, focusing currently on sort of ratcheting up to an overhead squatting movement.
Yeah.
And because I've had a lot of challenges with my thoracic mobility, and I've had shoulder surgery, so just this entire area has been frozen for.
It's pretty common for
a
wrestlers
decade.
too to have
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's like I have little Tyrannosaurus arms, and I also write. It's a
Right.
conflagration of
combination.
problems.
If you wrestle and write,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
screwed. Yeah.
And then from after that 20 to 30 minute exercise block, I will like to focus on some type of content, whether it be writing, audio, interviewing, etc. And then lunch, and then after lunch is where I do the grunt work. So if there's any grunt work I need to do, and by grunt work I mean stuff that doesn't require me to really be walking a mental tightrope and all cylinders on. So interviewing, I sometimes interviewing for research, I would put in that bucket, right? Not for broadcast, but for research. And on and on and on. So that's sort of the first 3 to 4 hour block of most of my days, at least in the last 6 months.
So you try to be by yourself to be the most effective? You find like being alone with no distractions is the way that you're most effective?
For me, yes. So, and I'm actually, part of the reason I'm down here down here in California. It's such a goddamn huge state. Since, yeah, I feel like sometimes Northern California and Southern California. It's a very contentious
I
relationship.
think they're trying to divide the state right
Yeah,
now.
no, it's very sort of like Texan in a way.
Yeah.
It's like if you had a wimpy Texas, it would be Northern California. Like the didgeridoo playing, pot smoking. San Francisco's and they're like, we're so different, and which is fine. But how the hell did I get over there? So being alone, I find one of my favorite ways to procrastinate is to talk and communicate with other people. So I need to remove the option to do that. And I do that by trying to isolate myself. I think that's another reason that I ended up being a night owl, is that I found I was most productive very late at night, where I couldn't procrastinate by IMing my friends. I wasn't getting phone calls. So from 10 p.m. to like 5 a.m., still, if I'm under the gun and I need to get a lot of hopefully high quality writing done, I'll still revert to that.
Well, there's some magic that happens like at 2 a.m. You're in the zone, you're writing, and the house is quiet, kids and wife and anybody else in the house are asleep. It's an addicting thing.
It's a magic place. And so when I look at the top in my mind, like high performing writers, and by high performing writers I mean people who kick out high quality writing on a consistent basis, among my friends, without exception, that's not true. There are a few journalists who've just been had a gun against their head for deadlines every day at X point in time. Those guys are machines. And women, they're just absolute machines. I can't identify with them. They're kind of Terminators. But among people who have not had that journalistic trench warfare experience, they either go to bed very, very late, like I did for a long time, so they have that quiet time when other people are asleep. So they either work after everyone else is asleep, or they wake up before everyone is woken up. And they fall into those two groups. So it's either the night owl camp or the people who wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, write for 2-3 hours, and then contend with the family, friends, business, etc.
You just explained a lot of things that were seemed like people who are night owls. I'm like, oh, they're just probably trying to get away from busy people. Or the busy activities of the day.
Yeah. I feel like there's a fight between the night owls and the morning people all the time. Like they both think they're right and they don't like each other.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I would say practically for people who want to be a writer, I write more now, but for a while you don't get paid to write. For a long time, you don't get paid to write. So you hustle during the day, and then because you want to create an opportunity for yourself, guess what? Writers write. And if you want to be one, you got to put in a lot of fucking writing. So you will stay up or you will get up. And if you not want to do that, then that's probably not going to happen for you. You can't wish it to happen. You got to sit down and do this for a long time.
You got to do the writing time. And I actually do my best drafting and editing by hand. So I do use a computer. Obviously, it'd be hard to get by without it. But I always do my first drafting and my note-taking in the field by hand. And then I'll identify the pieces that I want to put in order for a draft. Sometimes I'll then draft on the computer, but I will always print out and edit by hand. And in fact, you have 100 pages of a friend's, one of my very close friends' books. I'll give him a shout out, Neil Strauss, who's 7-time New York Times bestselling author. So his new book is going to be, amazing. I can't say anything about it right now.
Can I sneak in there while you're doing this and take a look at the cover?
But I printed it out, and I'll be editing, reading and editing today just to help, because he's been super helpful with a lot of my books as well.
Yeah. I met Neil in Sedona a few months ago, maybe. He was super generous, gave me a lot of awesome advice, and
Neil's
just was more than happy to share.
Neil's really tactical and a very, very good writer. Really brilliant, A-list interviewer as well, just from so much time at the New York Times and Rolling Stone and so forth. But yeah, just to bring it back to that point of sort of being alone, it's more that I'd say the writers who really hit home runs consistently, I'm not putting myself in that category, but just observing it, it's like between 10 p.m. and sort of 7 a.m. Whether they're at the front end or the tail end, they find time when the rest of the world is asleep. And to underscore, I think, a principle behind that, I think self-discipline discipline and self-control are very overrated. So, or there's an expensive, they're expensive. They're cognitively expensive. So you can have decision fatigue, right? It's like, okay, you could leave, all right, left to my own devices, like, I like Triscuits. Sure. I like ginger cookies. Love them. I could leave them just like laying around my house and rely on self-control. But no, that's a fool's errand, because I'll either tax myself cognitively,
right,
or I'll break. And so I think the putting systems in place that prevent your lesser behaviors is more effective and more efficient in terms of energy preservation than just trying to get more discipline.
Right.
And so by forcing myself to write in such a way that I am isolated, that I have a protected 3 to 4 hour block of time, I don't have to develop the self-control necessarily to stay off of Twitter or Facebook or not respond to my friends' texts, et cetera, because I'm simply choosing a setting and a system that absolves me of that responsibility. So the AT&T had a slogan way back in the day, which was "the system is the solution," and I think that's actually a great slogan for life. It's like, if you're finding things taxing and too hard, think about systematizing and process, and not just like trying harder. Once you've identified those systems and you know that for input X you're going to get output Y, then it's like, great, I have no problem with hard work. Once you've built a machine that allows you to get the most leverage, that's great. But otherwise, it's just like you're Sisyphus. You're pushing a boulder up a hill that's just going to keep rolling down and knocking your ass down to the bottom.
You won't win that.
If you don't want to cheat on your wife, you shouldn't hang out at the Playboy Mansion 5 days a week. Right. There's going to be temptation there that eventually you're going to crack on.
That was only once. In fairness.
Let's take a break real quick. All right, guys. Hey guys, Mike Bledsoe here from the Barbell Shrugged podcast, here to do a technique WOD on the snatch. The snatch is my favorite movement of all time. Not just because of the name, but because it is a full body movement. It's very athletic. It takes a lot of precision, finesse. It is probably the hardest thing that you could master in the world of fitness. If you don't know what a snatch is, Alex, my assistant here, will show you exactly what a snatch looks like. Give us a snatch, Alex. So some of you may be thinking, well, that was easy. He just grabbed a bar and he threw it over his head, and it looked silly. But a lot of you, if you're familiar with CrossFit or the sport of weightlifting, are very familiar with that and understand how difficult it can be. So we're going to go over the movement, break it down just a little bit. I'm going to start with the starting position. So this is not a deadlift. A lot of people make the common mistake that they should set up like a deadlift and they bring their shins right up to the bar. That is definitely what you should not do. So for most people, that's going to be, the bar is going to start over the ball of their foot, all right? So a little bit forward of mid-foot, just as Alex is set up here. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. As you get more into practice, you'll find exactly what position works best for you. It's going to depend, it's going to vary from person to person, little by little. All right, so he's going to start standing there. He's now going to reach down, and he's going to actually push his knees forward and let his shins come to the bar, all right? So again, not like a deadlift. If you're doing a deadlift, your hips would be higher. So Alex has his hips lower here. Notice that he has his shoulders in front of the bar here. So if I'm looking at this arm, it's almost straight up and down. What he doesn't want to do is sit back towards, he doesn't want to sit back anymore. You don't want to look like that. You want to bring your shoulders in front of the bar. This back is going to stay nice and tight here. And then he's also going to be engaging his lats a little bit right here. So as he comes up, he's going to be using his shoulders to keep that bar close to his body. So we're going to do the first half of the snatch. So Alex is going to lift this bar up and bring it up to his hips. And so as he's here, again, even right here at the hips, his shoulders are slightly in front of the bar. His weight is towards his heels here. So if you were to think about where your weight should be, it's at the front of your heels here. All right, let's go back to the floor. So that's what it's going to look like. You're going to squeeze the bar off the floor. You don't want to yank it off the floor, which is another common mistake. So he's going to squeeze it off the floor. He's going to get above the knees. He's going to touch the bar to his hips. And then he's going to jump and pull himself underneath the bar. So he's going to let that bar, he's going to squeeze that bar off the ground. As it comes up, he's going to explode and jump up. That bar is going to meet him at his hips. And it's going to get over his head. The biggest problem most people have is keeping that bar close and the bar meeting their hips, all right? Once you've got that, now you really need to focus on pulling underneath the bar. A real common mistake is that there's a lot of hips. No, we have to edit that out. One of the things that people do is they find they can really meet the bar really well with their hips, and they find they're snapping that, and then they're really lazy about getting underneath. And so what you really want to do is make sure that after you master that hip extension and really firing that bar up off of your hips, that you then remember to involve your arms just as much as you did with your hips. So this is much of an emphasis on pulling underneath as it is with pulling up. So think about pulling up with your hips and underneath with your arms and shoulders. It's one continuous pull. All right, so remember that and watch Alex. He keeps the bar nice and close as it goes past his chest, past his face, and overhead. Hopefully this is going to help you move forward in your adventures and It's an adventure. In your snatch adventures. All right. I can't even think now. For more information about how to perfect your snatch, damn it. All right, for more information on the snatch, go to barbellshrugged.com. We've got more technique videos, technique WOD videos, breaking down the snatch to the smaller components of the lifts.
There you go. What Mike's trying to say is that this is kind of a general overview. And we have other videos on Technique WOD where we break down the movement into its component parts. We go over like the first pole, the second pole, the transition, the catch phase, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're more advanced and you want to have more details on each specific part of the lift and you want mobility drills or other weightlifting drills, I feel like I'm just like really close to you right now. And you have more weight, you
got to talk into the microphone.
I felt weird. I was like right here on.
All right. If you want any more information on all that other stuff, go to barbellshrugged.com. And we're back with Tim Ferriss.
Dun-dun-dun.
So you did write the 4-Hour Body.
I did.
And in that book, you have a chapter on strength, and I've also heard you talk about hacking the deadlift and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, I make fun of the word hack a little bit.
Well, me too. I think it's overplayed.
It's just like I hacked this. I mean, it's like you mean it's a habit you formed?
Yeah. Well, no, I think that at this point, hack has just become so overused. I don't use it that much. Because it's kind of like, No Fear was all the thing back in the day. It's like if you're only wearing No Fear stuff, no offense, I mean it's a cool brand, but it's just like, God, it just got oversaturated at a point.
I kind of wish I would have kept some of my No Fear T-shirts.
Yeah.
You didn't move on.
Or it's just like you're still collecting Beanie Babies, really? Like that was a thing, but not anymore.
It's what I love.
No, so the strength components, I really feel like strength is, and this is not my own invented viewpoint. A lot of people feel this way, but it's sort of the bedrock for all of the other physical attributes. If you're trying to develop strength, if you're trying to develop, flexibility or endurance, metabolic conditioning, I feel like focusing on sort of relative strength is a very effective and efficient way to go about it, and it limits your variables, right? So if you're focusing on relative strength, sort of per pound body weight strength as opposed to absolute, what does that remove? For a lot of people, it removes the need to learn how to eat for hypertrophy, which is actually a big deal for me.
Well, this has probably been a struggle for a long time, right? Would you call yourself a hard gainer, Tim?
I would say, I mean, this is kind of my natural. My fighting weight would be 175, cutting down to 165, 160. But I've been as heavy as I think my very heaviest, I was 215 and not fat.
Wow.
But that required...
You got Bledsoe's PR beat, I think.
But that required eating... my full-time job was just eating. That's it. I mean, the training wasn't the hard part. It was the eating that was the hard part. So,
a lot of people don't understand that. Eating just consumes your whole life. Not many people have actually... plateaued at gaining weight. A lot of people plateaued at losing weight, and then they're frustrated because they can't eat anything. But most people haven't plateaued on gaining weight, and then you're like, "What the fuck do I do?" And you still try to eat more, and you're not getting bigger,
it's like you're in
and
prison.
it just consumes your whole existence, and that's very frustrating because you can't do anything else.
It's frustrating. You feel like you're trapped in the Coney Island hot dog eating competition. You're just like, you're like, to what end? This is, I'm not gaining any weight, but I'm eating another 1,000 calories. This is horrible. And,
I feel the pain.
So the point being, you remove that entirely when you focus on, say, developing maximal strength or near maximal strength in the deadlift movement, as one example. So in the 4-Hour Body, there were a number of chapters that address strength. One of them was basically co-authored by Marty Gallagher, who worked with Ed Cohn. Who pulled, what was it, 902 at 220?
Yeah, sumo and conventional stance. He's the strongest guy ever, pretty much.
Yeah.
What did AJ pull?
Over 900 or
over 900
or over 800 at least. Yeah, he benched 900.
Yeah, you might not even know that. AJ is one of the best powerlifters ever.
That's
lived.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's incredible. Yeah, those are big numbers. So
can't get him off social media over there,
or the couch. He likes to sit down.
So there was that chapter which focused on the bench press, which has always been a major weakness for me, just with all the shoulder stuff, among other things. But the deadlift protocol was based on the work of a coach named Barry Ross, who's actually based down here. And he was Allison Felix's coach, and she was the first track athlete, at least to my memory, who went from high school to professional track directly. And his athletes have broken. His athletes have broken, I want to say, at least a dozen national and world records. And the core of their program, and this has been replicated with skaters, swimmers, crazily enough, they focus on conventional or sumo pulls to just below the knees. and they're focusing on their weakest range of movement, breaking the weight off the floor and then dropping the weight. And what they'll do typically...
So they just break the weight off the floor and then drop.
And the reason they drop is not... I mean, I see some people... I've spent a lot of time around CrossFit and CrossFitters. A lot of people don't realize this. Like, I used to train with a lot of the early Santa Cruz CrossFit guys in like 2000, 2001 because I trained at a Ralph Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school way back in the day. CrossFit looked very different back then. But the point being, there's some people who lift in the gym. They're just like, they really want to make a show of it. I'm not saying that. It's not like a King Kong reenactment. It's they just pull and they drop. The reason they drop is to avoid hamstring injuries in the eccentric lower portion. Because as a track athlete, you have a torn hamstring, you're done.
Yeah.
Depending on which black market chemist you have around you. So they would pull from the floor up to the knees, roughly, and then drop. They would do 2 to 3 repetitions that way, and then they would have at least 5 minutes in between sets, but at sort of the halfway point in the break, so let's just say it's 2.5 minutes at the midway point, they would do some form of plyometric exercise.
Yeah.
So they would either be jumping up onto something and back down, or ideally running short sprints. Like 10 to 15.
If they're a track athlete.
That's right.
The running is what makes
10
sense.
to 15 meters. And you would do this for just a few sets, and then you're done. And he also used this for the bench press and some of the other power movements, but for a track athlete, it made no sense to come all the way down to sort of regulation touch point.
He's looking for like a potentiating effect.
Exactly. So they were using sort of what you might see with 2 or 3 boards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was all of his athletes, including like the 13-year-old girls, can pull like 2 to 3 times body weight for repetitions.
But once you're explosive, it's easier.
Yeah, and I was astonished because I've always, like, hand strength has been a weakness for me. I have small hands, and I was just astonished by how quickly I didn't use wraps. How quickly I was able to add 100 to 150 pounds to my max deadlift. It was insane. I mean, we're talking like 2 to 3 months.
That improved your grip strength as well?
Oh, incredibly. Yeah, just unbelievably.
So are you trying to pull weight off the ground that you wouldn't normally deadlift? Is this like something that's...
Yeah.
Okay, so say your max deadlift is 400. You're putting like 415 on the bar and just trying to break it off the ground?
No, in my case, my hands, if I were doing, say, deadlifts for repetitions, and I'd have to look back at my journals. I mean, I have all this stuff recorded, but let's just say that after 4 or 5 repetitions, my hands were the weakest link, and I couldn't pull more than like 315.
Right.
For a set of 5 or something like that. I got to the point where I was doing with trap bar, because I ended up experimenting with the trap bar. I was doing like 475 from the ground for reps, with no reps, with just chalk, and it's like that's a pretty tremendous jump.
It's a big jump
in weight, and doing so comfortably without any injury, and
not a lot of fatigue either.
Zero fatigue. You would come out of these workouts feeling better than when you went in, which was just a revelatory experience for me. So I find, and what I liked about the protocol, among other things, is number one, your like total sort of time under tension for a week. Now keep in mind, this is for a track athlete, not someone who's focusing exclusively on powerlifting.
Mm-hmm. Right, so if you're trying to get better at the squat or deadlift itself, the rules may change a little bit.
The rules may change, right, because there's a much more, it's totally different, right? It's like, it's completely different.
The contrast and loads is what's important.
But what's fascinating about it, though, is that if you were to look at how most people practice partial movements, they're focusing on the sort of the maximal strength piece of the range of movement, right? They're doing rack pulls or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen anyone just practice off the ground to the knees. I just found that juxtaposition so fascinating.
We would abide by that. Like, if you can take something and make it really heavy, but use the minimum amount of load and do the least amount of wear and tear on your body, you can get a really strong training effect, and you're going to keep being able to be strong because you're not beating your dick in every day at the gym. People they go, I'm frustrated. I'm trying to get stronger and I do this Monday through Friday. I train 2 times on Sunday. They're like, dude, you got to do a fuckload less stuff.
Yeah.
And also maybe move fast.
No,
occasionally.
Definitely. And I think that this is something that I'm going to talk more about with probably Kelly Starrett at some point. But Kelly's the guy to ask about this. But sort of the death of athleticism. And there's a lot of working out for the sake of working out. There's nothing wrong with that per se. But just to take a slightly different tack on it, what I would say is for me over time, especially now, I've realized something that I was originally told by, I don't know if you guys know the name Ken Leisner.
Yeah.
Dr. Ken.
He's in New Jersey, wasn't he?
Yeah, oh yeah. I did the hardest workout of my life was probably with Dr. Ken, having him put me through a workout. And I was coming from having trained with this former military guy named Matt Britsky, who's also the head of strength and conditioning at Princeton at the time. And so, of course, Dr. Ken just wanted to fucking hammer me into the floor.
I'll show this
which
guy.
he did very, very successfully. But the point being, he had said at one point that, you know, the priority of strength training for sports is injury prevention, number one.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's performance enhancement. But number one, it's injury prevention. And I think that it's very easy when you're chasing PRs to lose sight of that.
Absolutely.
And I'm at a point where I don't really care if I can clean 400 pounds. I don't really care. I mean, I don't care that much. But if I could get back into say previous competition wrestling condition, or back to the point where I could do the gymnastics and acrobatics that I could do when I was in my early 20s, that's interesting.
Right.
Having that type of versatility. So that has modified my training approach substantially.
Now,
and anything that has even a moderate injury potential is out.
Got it.
Does not matter. I don't care about the functional benefit. Like if I could tear a ligament or a tendon, and there's sort of empirically you look at like the data set and it's like, wow, people always fucking hurt themselves with X. Just not going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't care what the performance upside could be.
If you find that to be true as I get older.
Yeah.
If you haven't ran a sprint in years and you try to run a full speed 100-yard sprint,
you're going to tear your hamstring.
if you take a group of 100 people that are in good shape and they ran a full speed 100-yard sprint, it's like guaranteed fucking 10 of them are pulling a hamstring.
Definitely.
It's like it's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
So something like that you would just avoid at all costs, you would strategically build your way back towards it.
I would avoid, or I would build myself back up to it. So I'm working with some. I've never been someone who's focused on Olympic lifts. Partially because I've always had, I shouldn't say always, but I had reconstructive shoulder surgery, and I was just very tentative at best in considering these movements. But I have been working with this incredible Olympic weightlifter in Northern California, and a guy named Jerzy Gregorek, who's really a Polish guy, just a fascinating character, and working with very, very, very light weights. I mean, absurdly light weights with impeccable attention to mechanics and form. And it's been fascinating to see once you sort of correct alignment and posture and everything is firing properly, even if you're using weights that would get you like kicked out of a jazzercise class, there's incredible transfer over to other things. And that's been... it's never been my model. Do you know what I mean? My model has always been like, go to failure, puke in a bucket, whatever the fuck. Like if you can walk gingerly out the door after workout, like you didn't work out.
Right.
And
some value to that.
Right.
But it's not the whole story.
Yeah. And so but just from wrestling and all this stuff, I've always had that kind of brute force mentality, and I'm at a point where, especially after learning to swim very late in life, 30 plus, with total immersion, and that's in the forearm body. I talk about that, but rethinking the biomechanics, the way I got to the point where I could swim long distances swimming was not by working out. It was by viewing it as practice, right? Not workout. It's practice, not a workout. And so more and more, even if I'm doing heavy lifting, for me, I view it as practice, not workout, because I think it's phrasing it that way sometimes
changes your mindset.
Changes your mindset.
Interestingly enough, I just started changing how I name workouts, and for Olympic lifts. So we're developing a program right now, specifically for bringing like someone who doesn't have a lot of exposure, like years and years of exposure to Olympic weightlifting and good coaching.
Yeah,
we're like kind of rebuilding, the foundation for that. Yeah, and I started naming snatch and clean and jerk stuff under practice. Yeah, and the workout comes after. Yeah, it's like the workout comes after the practice, and so like that. And I find that to be very true. It like puts people in a different mindset about what they're doing, because people just want to max out all the time.
Yeah. And it's I mean, mind your labels, folks. It's like, if you're going to take one thing away from this, mind your labels. I mean, those words have a lot of power. Yeah. And you take a word that people have heard for decades, but they haven't trained before, and you're like, okay, this is a workout. that is going to affect their behavior, the things they sacrifice, i.e. technique,
Right.
And replace it with effort, which is a dangerous kind of Faustian bargain.
You're unknowingly framing that experience and what it should be for them by naming it inappropriately.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the person who introduced me to Barry Ross was actually Pavel, and I always thought it was Tsatsulin, but it's Tsatsulin, Tsatsulin. And
if you search Pavel, this guy's coming up immediately. He is the Pavel.
Yeah, he's the Pavel, which is impressive when you consider that I think it's like Peter in Russian. So it's a very common name, but he is the Pavel, and Pavel is.
You just interviewed him on your podcast.
I did, and so for people interested, if you just search the Tim Ferriss Show and Pavel, Pavel, it'll pop right up.
That's excellent.
It ended up being for me. And I've read a lot about this stuff, and I don't make any claims to be a world-class athlete or anything like that. But I've interviewed a lot of world-class athletes, and we talked about every aspect, all of the attributes, of course. So different. Let's just say flexible, strong, and so on. But we talked about different training approaches and how they have evolved since, say, the 80s, and what he's focused on in particular. Because Pavel is, and I've done some training certifications with Pavel, is very, very strong and very, very flexible. And I've noticed that with some of the Olympic weightlifters that I've spent time with, just their particularly, and I think this is very uncommon in modern society where we end up in this type of position. It's like kyphotic position. Their sort of hip and thoracic and shoulder girdle flexibility is just amazing.
Yeah.
So I'd encourage people to check that out. It's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. I should just take a step back and say the reason I started the podcast, there were two reasons. The first was I enjoyed being interviewed in long form as opposed to doing, I've done a lot of, let's say, short TV morning show stuff. And it's like, okay, you have your 15 seconds. The person's looking past your head at a teleprompter. It's like the fakest conversation ever imaginable.
Yeah.
You have to get there 3 hours in advance to have your head, airbrushed.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's a miserable experience.
We actually did bring our makeup artist in for you today.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, I wanted to step out of the glare so you guys would be able to see anything at home with my reflective forehead. But the first was I enjoyed it. Mark Maron, Joe Rogan, and so on. I really enjoyed being interviewed, and I wanted to see if I would enjoy being on the other side. The second was for all of my books, I've interviewed these guys like Pavel or Brian Orozco is an amazing parkour athlete who's competed on American Ninja Warrior. And these interviews would be 1, 2, 3 hours long, so podcast length, but they were never shared with anyone, And I was just like, I would always think halfway through, I'm like, Jesus, these gems are amazing, and I can only put 10% of it in the book, and they're just lost. So it's been fun to record, with Pavel. Just sort of a master class that people can go back to that is not going to expire, And that, and we did one with another guy, actually. Some of your fans might be interested in, named Josh Waitzkin. So a lot of people won't know this name, but Josh Waitzkin was, if you guys have ever seen the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, so he's the little kid in real life. So he was considered a chess prodigy, but he has a sort of learning framework, skill acquisition framework that he has since applied to push hands, Tai Chi. He was a world champion, and then also to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he actually co-founded a school with Marcelo Garcia in New York City. Marcelo's
Marcelo.
The phenom. He's really pretty much the undisputed best jiu-jitsu fighter of the last 20 years or in history. It's even the top guys are just like, he's the guy.
I went and grappled with him one time, and it was the first time that I'd felt like I didn't know anything. I tried to do something, he would just be like, just throw me on my side. Now, I would feel like a beginner, I'd never done anything in my whole life. I've been grappling for 10 years. And he would kind of laugh at me and be like, no, you still need to try. And
he's
I'm
the
like,
nicest,
I was trying.
He's the nicest guy ever, but then he's just like, and you're like,
so dangerous guy.
Yeah. So Josh, very few people know this. He's the first black belt under Marcelo.
Oh, really?
And and he applied the same kind of learning methodology to all these things. He's done it also with finance. And so I did an interview with Josh Waitzkin, and it's just the opportunity to sort of capture those conversations and share them has been really fun. So,
wow, it's amazing. And
Yeah.
you did? Can we talk about
Yeah.
who you just interviewed?
Yeah, definitely.
And that'll post on what day?
So I did have the opportunity. Another reason I'm down here to interview Arnie, the man himself, the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, at his house, which was just a surreal, amazing experience.
Oh,
and
sure.
Oh my God!
that
Can only imagine.
that should be out probably February 3rd, first week of February, I would imagine. So you can just subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Tim Ferriss Show, and hopefully we can put some links in the show notes.
Yep.
But the Arnold is, I was so fucking nervous for that interview. I didn't sleep.
I mean,
like 2
but
days.
where do you go from there? Like
No,
after
no.
you get
Well, for
Arnold, like
us,
that's the tippy top, right?
Well,
He's the man for us.
Yeah.
We lifted weights in the beginning because this fucking guy.
Arnold is like he's the most natural alpha ever. First of all, like it's not contrived, and he's just like oozes alpha, obviously. And his factual recall is just like second to none. And I've met some world-class memory athletes who compete, who can memorize thousands of numbers, and his effortless sort of natural recall is unbelievable, just hardware-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into some really, really fun stuff. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but we spent probably 15 minutes. Do you remember in Pumping Iron when he's talking about when he's getting inside like Ferrigno's head, and he's like, "Oh, if it was just 3 days later, it'd be perfect." And you can see Lou like, "Oh,"
Right.
And then they're talking about like him giving advice and telling people to like yell in the showers when they're posing, and he's like, and then I give them the wrong advices, and like, and he is a master of psychological warfare. So we got into that for like 15 minutes.
Did he fuck you up?
No. He like, these are not the droids you're looking. No, he didn't. No. We talked about some like how he would do that, how he would pick like his targets, and you can build up your own confidence. You can also remove the confidence from other people, and very fascinating, super fascinating conversation. But so that was definitely a huge highlight for me.
Wow.
But what I want to do with these interviews, among other things, is Arnie was a dream come true, because obviously I'm a child of the 80s, so Predator and everything else. That's just like burned. Yeah, Commando.
Was that your first
the
question?
saw blades, like
So first things first. Predator. What happened when?
I was like, there's a plot hole I need you to fix for me. No. I actually, I'll tell you. No, I can't.
Come on, Tim.
All right, so I'll just tell you how I opened the interview. The opener of the interview was, all right, I want to start off by talking about big balls. That was my opener. There are some crazy stories from that guy, but what I want to do is have the Arnolds of the world, certainly, and I'd like to. There are a couple of guys who should be on the show shortly, who are sort of A-listers in the Hollywood world. But at the same time, what I want to do is find the really esoteric, crazy edge cases. So, for instance, I want to get. These are like kind of two fantasies of mine. One would be like the highest paid custom knife maker in the world. I want to find the guy who's like, I only make 20 knives a year.
Right.
They cost $100,000 a piece.
Right.
That's it.
And if you want one, you got to come talk to me.
Yeah. You have to come and like run an American Ninja Warrior course while I'm like shooting crossbows at you or whatever. Like, I want to find that guy, because people who are the best at what they do they share things in common. You can always learn a lot from them, even if they're like the most amazing whatever door handle polisher and like a castle somewhere. Like, you can learn something from them. I want to find like one of the highest paid escorts in the world, like a call girl. I'm just so fast.
Me
like,
too.
No, but the idea is like that's a flooded market. It's like, okay, like at the top end, like you're all attractive. So like, why are you getting paid?
That's true.
100 times
At
more.
some point,
there's
there's a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Like after $2,000, like what separates the $10,000 girl from the $2,000 girl?
Or it's it's because there's a point where attributes aren't enough, right? You get to like the Michael Phelps level in swimming, and you can see this from like high school level. It's like, oh, you got like the slightly chubby kid, the very tall kid, the this, the that, the this kid. And as you get to higher levels of competition, the body types become more and more similar until they all look basically the same.
Yeah.
And at the highest point of competition in almost anything, and there are like complete freak shows who show up once every 10 or 20 years, but otherwise, it's like, all right, now it comes down to your systems, your routines, your training, your coaching,
belief in what you're
so
doing.
So I would find out from her. I'd be like, all right, who was your coach? Like seriously, to get to that level, like
yeah. Somebody had to teach you something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like so. I would just. I'm really looking forward to getting some of those really unusual edge cases because they're never interviewed. And I don't know why.
Well, I love that. Like, it's a good advice to athletes. You can go out, like, if you want to be a weightlifter, you can go out and find, and you should just take whatever money you got and go out and spend time with them because just being around them, you'll learn it. Like the experiences you said you had. But I found that, like, one of my favorite books ever for let me think of new insights into lifting was, like, Born to Run.
Yeah.
Like, It was running. It was different. But the way he presented that case of running, I saw all kinds of insights into the thing I loved. I didn't have to go, like, I wouldn't necessarily get a lot of value out of reading more about strength training.
Right.
Because the same ideas are just being hashed to hash and kind of recombined.
Yep.
But a whole fresh take is empowering.
Oh,
you see, well, shit, we have nothing in common except almost everything.
Yeah.
In the way we approach this thing we love.
Definitely. And I think that's where the gems are, honestly, because you find whether it's in strength training, if you get even more niche, say like CrossFit, or you go into the tech world, is a great example of this because I do a lot in tech and have that's sort of my more financially. I mean, the books have done very, very well and all that, but the startups, that's my main financial gig is advising and working with startups. But it's an echo chamber, right? So you find these belief systems, and in some cases, sort of cliched expressions just become the language.
Mm-hmm.
And to find a breakthrough, you have to look outside of that echo chamber. And I was chatting with upcoming interview. This one should be coming up pretty soon. But Matt Mullenweg, who is basically the lead developer of WordPress, and now he's the CEO of Automatic, and WordPress powers, people don't realize this, more than 20% of the entire internet.
I believe it. Yeah.
And his company is worth more than $1 billion now. So on and so forth. But when I was talking to him about how he developed systems, it was from reading political science. It was from reading certain political science books that talked about systems and like first and secondary and third order effects.
Recognizing patterns.
Yeah, because if you're just reading the 6 books from people who are within tech, they're all going to be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They're going to be.
We've kind of done the same thing. We look at it. We don't go to fitness business like industry things. We like to look at other business industries and learn from that. And it's like, like we learned some stuff from like the dating industry.
Yeah.
Like, how does that apply to like what we're doing over here? Why is anyone in fitness not applying these concepts?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we'll do it.
We almost have to. There's not that many good fitness business books in the world.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of them.
Until yours comes out, Doug, I'm announcing it now. Better Business, but no, you don't have a
coming out 10 years from now.
Better bodies, better business.
There you go.
Too busy doing business to write about it.
No, but I mean, if you want to, who better to teach you how to
people.
grow your fitness business to $1 billion and go find a guy who did it in any other field and has done it several times from $1,000 to $1 billion. Like he knows how to do it. It'll work for you.
Yeah.
As one just example.
And at the end of the day, if you're there's giving advice and then there's getting people to take advice, and those are two very different things. They're very, very different. And
it sounds like you do that really well, by the way. Like getting people to take your advice. I've been to more business conferences and conversations with people where they said I was working and then I quit my job and I started my own thing. I found a muse and I started my own gig.
We basically
because they read your book. So I actually really want to hear this.
Right.
Yeah. So the good program that you follow is better than the perfect program that you quit, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's lost oftentimes when you have top performers coaching other people, because they have maybe 20 years of experience. They have certain odd attributes that make them mutants, and so they're very unforgiving and unyielding oftentimes in what they prescribe. They're just like, this is the program.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you deviate, I can't help you.
Right.
And I can't accept you.
And that works okay if you have a large group of people, because a lot of people quit, 5 people will remain. Those 5 people are world champions.
Well, right. So if you're the Chinese government, you're just trying to find the 4 people you can put on your gymnastics team. That's perfect.
Right.
And it does work in real life.
Yeah, but if you're trying to, say, get the highest percentage of people out of 1,000 or a million to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
You can't take that approach.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
If you're running a gym,
you can't take
those. You got to keep
You can't
your
take that approach either. So for me, it's about finding the minimal effective dose, sort of the lead domino that will then trigger all of the other behaviors that I want. But I don't provide them I don't provide them all up front because it's overwhelming. Similarly, if I've had readers reach out to me who have lost more than 200 pounds on the slow carb diet,
Wow.
right? And I never, with people who have that amount of weight to lose, or even like 20 or 30 pounds, if they haven't dieted before or they don't have an exercise habit, I don't prescribe exercise in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because exercise is additive. They have to create time for that if they don't already have that behavior. They have to eat, and clearly, if they're fucking fat, they're already eating. So, so you have these sort of three.
Touche.
Yeah, so you have
say it to them right,
so,
just like that.
So you have these three. You have these three blocks of time that are already allocated to eating, and you're just changing the default meal. There's no additional expenditure of time. And the other challenge with that specifically is, and again, thinking of sort of the secondary and third order effects. It's like, well, why do people fail? Well, and identifying those failure points and removing them to the extent possible. Well, one of the reasons that people fail when they're trying to lose weight is they start with exercise. They only have a scale. They're not doing body fat composition analysis. They start with exercise, and two things happen. They start gaining muscle, so they believe incorrectly that they're not losing fat because they don't see it reflected in the scale dropping. And secondly, they build up their appetite or feel like they've earned a bigger meal, so they end up eating more food than even they were eating before.
Yeah.
Well, when I started training harder, I certainly just naturally eat more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that in the beginning, it's like, all right, you need to identify the smallest change that will trigger other changes, and then the failure points that you can avoid in the beginning. And I've taken that really seriously, and I think that's why you see just a high level of adherence, right? Because you have, if you're considering any new program, right? Like I want to start a podcast. Okay, all right. Well, you want to start a podcast. Is it going to be effective, right? Is it going to help you achieve goals related to the podcast? Is it going to be efficient? Are you going to have the time to do it, right? Or can you make the time to do it? Are you doing it in a smart way, right? Like you guys have your system. I have my system. It's like, is your process going to be good and efficient? And then adherence. Are you actually going to are you going to continue to make the podcast until you reach those goals? Or are you going to quit after 3 episodes?
Because that's what most people would do.
And almost everyone quits after 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at it, it's just like the dieting. Why do they quit? They try to get too fancy with the equipment, right?
Yeah.
They try to add in, they try to do all the post-production themselves, right? And they're, in some, when you look at it, they're trying to adopt too many new behaviors at once. That's it.
Yeah.
Too many new skills.
One at a time.
Yeah, it's just
is
like
plenty enough.
It's just like cooking. You want to learn how to cook? It's like start with like recyclable bamboo plates or paper plates. You don't want to learn, if you never cook, that means you don't know how to clean stuff. You don't know how to prep stuff. You don't know how to entertain guests. Like, don't try to do all 5 of those at once. Just focus on the cooking, for God's sake, you know?
Yeah.
And people probably hear things like that, and they're like, no, you can't tell somebody to use paper plates forever. And are you suggesting that maybe in that example, you're not saying they have to do it forever, but they have to start with this one thing, and then they can evolve past it?
It's not forever at all. It's
But
just
if you're
for,
Doug,
it's just
you
for,
will do it forever.
Yeah.
I've been forced not to now. My wife doesn't dig the paper plates.
Yeah.
He's
She's
been
domesticated
doing, like,
you.
he made it like 10 years with just paper plates.
It was great when I was single.
But no, you do it for the first, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and you're like, okay, this is now a behavior, like brushing my teeth. I know how to do this. I'm on autopilot, so it's not causing a lot of decision fatigue.
Right.
Now I can add in a new behavior.
Yep.
And that new behavior is going to be, and it could be, the sort of rapid prep and cleanup, right? Because they're I won't bore people with this, but they're really actually very, very smart ways to wash dishes and very stupid ways to do it. And you can learn those from chefs who work. Look at that, there's a dolphin out there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, straight.
Oh, yeah.
there it is.
That's pretty awesome.
So do a lot of experts, like say a nutrition expert or a fitness expert, see the advice that you're giving to someone who has no experience, and you're trying to make it easy for them to progress through these steps, and they look at that piece of advice and they say that's not good advice because they're operating from this expert mentality?
All the time. And I'll give you a very common example, which is a lot of paleo folks get their panties in a twist about the fact that I have legumes. They're like, oh my God, your fucking small intestine's gonna like explode like aliens, like on the person you're sitting across from.
Hold on for a minute.
Yeah, and it's like, well, first of all, I'm not convinced that's the case. Quite frankly, we could have a discussion about the science behind that. But secondly, pure, like very strict veganism and very, very, very strict paleo have low adherence rates. When you're trying to take someone from standard American diet to strict anything, what happens? Well, if they travel at all, they're going to fail, right? They're just going to fail. If they have a lot of social constraints, family members, etc.
Get rid of those family members.
Get rid of the family members. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. So my point to people is like, look, if you're trying to get as many, I've probably gotten more people to paleo by using slow carb as the gateway drug than most people who are pushing paleo books. So it's understanding the domino effect and the layering of behaviors. It's lazy as a coach to try to foist all of that on someone to start with. It is lazy and bad coaching.
Awesome advice.
And it's because it takes more effort to do the hard thinking on the front end to figure out, like, okay, how can I maximize results for people individually while maximizing the number of participants who get to that end goal? That requires a lot of thinking on the front end.
Yeah, we have coaches and we have programs, and that's one thing they have to focus on a lot is they're always brainstorming, like, what habit needs to happen after this habit.
Yeah.
It's like what's going to be the most valuable and then also the most doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think that that it's not that hard. It requires a handful of questions. And I think that if you want to, God damn, they're all over the place. This is so cool.
It's Attack of the Dolphins.
There's a whole pod of dolphins.
Yeah.
Wow. This is nice. All right.
The benefits of Malibu.
Yeah, seriously. God, it makes me want to go out paddleboarding. I think the key to teaching is the key to teaching and learning is identifying failure points and the smallest behavior that will get you started. Right? It's like, oh, you don't floss your teeth? Like, start with flossing your front 2 teeth. That's it. Like, before you go to bed. That's it. 2 teeth. Start there. Don't be like, I'm going to floss my teeth twice a day. No, don't. If you don't exercise, like going to the gym 5 times a week, like, I'll short that position. I'll bet against. Like, if a 100 people, I'll bet against them.
Yeah.
But it's on the other hand, and here's the thing to understand is that if you set a lower boundary, people can exceed it, and you have to rig the game so people can win it. So, for instance, if I were to say, okay, you've done 8 weeks of slow carb. You lost 20 pounds the first month. Very, very common and very achievable for anyone who weighs like more than 180 and has a decent amount of body fat. Okay, you've lost 20 pounds. You've lost like 10 pounds the second month. You have your default meals down, both for in the house, outside of the house. Let's say if you're going to work or whatever. Now let's layer in exercise. And the way we're going to start is either with something at home, like, all right, you're going to get one. If it's a male, let's just say who's decently, has decent skeletal structure, it's like, all right, we're going to get you like a 53-pound kettlebell or a 35-pound kettlebell. Or you can say, all right, you have to go to the gym and you have to spend 10 minutes there.
Yeah.
Once a week. That's it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? They're going to go in, and chances are, I'm not a big treadmill guy, but it's good to use for this example. You say, all right, you have to spend 5 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes on the treadmill. Well, if they do, if they go in, they're probably going to end up doing 15 or 20 or 30, right? But if you set the pass-fail mark at you have to go to the gym 3 times a week and run 5 miles.
Right.
As soon as they don't do that twice, they're just going to quit.
Yeah.
They feel like a loser, too.
Yeah, they feel like a loser, and they're going to go to 0. And when I say they, I also mean me. Like, this is not pointing the finger at other people. Yeah, humans in general. You have to understand those sort of psychological dynamics. It's not that hard to do. Anyway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lots of knowledge here, folks. I think we should go ahead and shut this one down and maybe save some information for next time, because I know you only have so much to talk about.
I'm almost out on my I know. I'm
be out here till the sun goes down.
You're starting to panic.
Then I do think that someone does need to go paddleboarding. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out, guys.
And,
it was a blast.
If people want the Tim Ferriss Show, make sure to subscribe to that. Where else can they find you?
So the Tim Ferriss Show, you can find very easily. If you go to 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, you can just click on podcast also. If you want the Pavel episode, it's just 4hourworkweek.com/Pavel. That'll take you to a bunch of stuff, including some 15 common questions that were voted up that he'll be answering as kind of a part 2.
Oh, cool.
And then Facebook, just facebook.com/Tim Ferriss with 2 R's, 2 S's, @TFerriss on Twitter, and that's pretty much it.
We'll link all to that in the show notes, folks. Just go down below and click away.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for
Guys.
coming on the show.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrugged.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, Technique Wad, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now. Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.